Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going deep. We're embarking on a real psychological descent, a grim, dark fable that completely challenges everything we've ever been taught about where to look for meaning. Using a really captivating mix of philosophy and philology, we're going to explore what's called the inverted journey. So get ready to strip away all those lofty illusions of the sky, because we are plunging straight down into the stark, grounded reality of the human condition.
Okay, let's dive into this. Our whole journey here is guided by an entity from the source text known as the Star of High Time. You can think of this figure as the all-seeing witness, looking down from the distant heavens. But here's the twist. Rather than telling us to look up, this witness hits us with the parable of the misplaced zenith. The quote says it all. The divine representation is actually found at the nadir of a cold, stone cell. It completely subverts that age-old idea that the sacred is, way up there in the clouds. Actually, the ultimate truth, it's waiting for us at the absolute bottom.
And that brings us to stage one of our dark fable, the false heavens above.
Let's move through this and see how it builds, because it's pretty fascinating how mankind has been conditioned to just constantly stare at unreachable heights. We look up to the sky for the holy, for meaning, for validation, all while completely ignoring the physical reality sitting right in front of us. Our source material argues this upward gaze is actually a massive trap. The inverted journey is a literal downward plunge away from those false heights. It starts at step 1, the false zenith, which represents those distant, unreachable prayers. Then we fall right through step 2, the mask, which we're going to deconstruct in just a second. And finally, we land at step 3, the cold stone cell. This is definitely not a journey of ascending to glory. It's a deliberate reduction. It's shedding everything fake until we hit rock bottom.
Falling through that second step brings us to the parable of the celestial mirror. From the perspective of high time, all of our societal posturing is revealed for what it truly is. The social persona is nothing more than a mask for a stage. That endless pursuit of identity, it's really just a sameness, this constant, repetitive performance that ultimately leaves a person feeling totally hollow and unreal. It's a suffocating mask that literally chokes the living creature beneath it.
Moving on to section 2, the false protections.
To truly break down this social persona, the Star of High Time gives us two archetypal figures who have built their entire existence around these masks. First up, we examine the tragic failure of the knight in the parable of the frozen armor. Look at the philological root of armor, armera. It literally means fitting with weapons, and the text powerfully argues that this act of armoring yourself is the exact opposite of truly living. The knight, well, he thinks his armor makes him strong, right? But it's actually just a cage of sameness. He's essentially a ghost inside a metal shell, completely refusing to feel the world around him.
And that leads to this incredibly visceral moment in the fable. The authentic man inside the knight only emerges when that heavy breastplate finally hits the stone floor. And it doesn't happen with some glorious, triumphant symphony. It happens with an unceremonious clang. I really want you to feel the weight of that. All that protection, all that ego and posturing, just dropping to the floor in a single, heavy, unceremonious thud. That is the exact moment reality actually begins.
Next, the Star of High Time unmasks the priest in the parable of the echoing silence. Now, we usually think of the word saker as meaning holy or set apart, but this parable redefines it entirely. The priest's ceremonial silence isn't a vessel for the divine at all. It's just a hollow cavern. He wants to be set apart, but he actually just ends up nameless and completely alone. He's hiding behind all these rituals out of a deep-seated, terrifying fear of being truly known.
And this brilliantly illustrates their core tragedy. You have the knight using physical armor to create a cage of sameness. And on the flip side, you have the priest using spiritual armor to create a hollow cavern. Despite looking entirely different on the outside, they share the exact same internal struggle. They are both using their social personas as this sovereign law to desperately protect themselves against vulnerability.
Which brings us to a really critical juncture. The sources refer to this protective delusion as the unwoundable fallacy. The idea that if you can't be hurt, you're safe. But here's the catch. If you can't be hurt, you aren't real. So I have to ask, if the heights are false and our armor only isolates us, what actually shatters this unwoundable fallacy? What force could possibly be strong enough to bring us back down to earth?
That brings us to section 3, the jester's radical gravity.
In this dark fable, it isn't a king or a holy man who saves the day. The catalyst for our final descent is the jester. He represents that disruptive, undeniable force, you need to initiate a radical shift downward. We see this in the parable of the jester's gravity. The jester carries a heavy stone, and this stone is the essential weight needed to drag the inflated ego down from those unreachable heights. It pulls the ego straight out of the sky and forces it into the shared honesty of a cramped 6x4 stone room. Radical vulnerability, it turns out, isn't light and airy. It is a heavy, inescapable gravity that grounds us in truth.
So, the crucial point is captured perfectly in the philological root of vulnerability itself. Vulnus, meaning wound. The capacity to be hurt isn't a weakness in this framework. It is a fundamental requirement to be real. By shedding all our distractions, all our heavy armor, we are reduced until only one single thing remains: the ember voice. It is the honest, warm, fragile confession of a truly authentic human being.
And finally, Section 4, the constellation of wounds.
Now, what's really interesting here is how the architecture of radical vulnerability is finally resolved. We discover what's actually waiting for us at the bottom of that cold stone cell. The parable of the constellation of wounds completely redefines our relationship with the universe. It tells us to abandon those unreachable heights once and for all. Because the only stars that actually matter are found in the open space of shared human wounds. The divine isn't found in perfect, distant prayers. No, the intersection of the human and the holy is mapped entirely through our mutual failure. It's forged through courageous, shared struggle, right within our own skin. Our sources use some incredibly tactile language here, and it's absolutely vital to understanding the message. The Creator is met right here, in the ache in your bones and the raw warmth of the flesh. It is physical, it's immediate, it is the suffering and the shared flaws of human existence that actually make us holy, rather than our constant, exhausting attempts to escape them. Which leads us to the central thesis of the entire inverted journey. The body is the sanctuary. This is the ultimate negation of the social persona. Sovereign law is no longer determined by the mask you wear on a stage or your external achievements or the elaborate armor you build. The true sanctuary is internal. It is your physical, vulnerable, incredibly grounded self. We've traveled all the way from the false heavens down into the stark, unavoidable reality of the cold stone cell. We've seen the suffocating nature of our masks and the profound holiness of our shared, vulnerable humanity. So I want to leave you with a thought to turn this mythic fable directly onto your own life. If your armor, your social mask, your cage of sameness were to hit the floor with an unceremonious clang today, what ember voice remains in your sanctuary? Keep questioning, keep digging, and thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.